Hi guys, I am Jacob Innans, and today we are going to be looking at how to switch from from auto to manual mode on your camera. So to start with, I'm just going to tell you the main settings, which is shutter speed, ISO and aperture. Hopefully you're liking this new view. Hung up some of my photos on the wall. And I'm using a 35mm f1.8 now, so I have some separation. Which, cause I was previously using the Lumix 18-40 kit lens. So, I'm gonna have a look at shutter speed. Just moving. So basically shutter speed is just how long the shutter, so basically your sensor's here and your camera has a shutter that goes like this to allow light into the sensor, because when there's light in the sensor you can see the image. So basically shutter speed is how long the camera is going to let the sensor see the light. So this is the sensor and this is the shutter. It goes like, let's say you're doing like a 2-second, it goes 1, 2. It closes. So it's just how long the sensor will see light. So the longer it is, so if you're using like a 60-second exposure, it is going to be way brighter than like a 1/2000th shutter. Now, anything over probably 1/15th, I would say, you need to have the camera on a tripod for. But if you're doing something handheld, I would recommend trying to keep it above at least 1/20th or 1/15th. 1/50th if you don't have IBIS, and 1/15th's a stretch if you do have internal in-body image stabilization, which is what IBIS is. So I definitely would recommend, if you need to use it, I would, because if you're doing like panning, which is what a lot of like F1 photographers would do, you pan with the car, so you literally just follow the car with your camera, and you get like nice, like you get the motion blur. But if you're taking like a landscape, you just want to use something on a tripod or quite higher. So it's quite easy to work out. You just, well, it's not easy to work out. The only thing the way you learn it is just by going out and trying. Because I used to have no idea, but now that since I've tried, it's like you just know. Like your brain, you start to know what settings will suit where you are. So if you are taking something moving fast and you don't want motion blur and you're not panning, definitely keep it higher. So if you're doing an animal, I would definitely recommend keeping it higher. Yes, you don't have to, but I would recommend it. Go down. So now we're going to look at aperture, which is measured in f-stops, or if you have a cine lens, it probably is a t-stop. So an f-stop is basically just how big the hole is that lets the light in, and a t-stop, it's slightly different, where it is it is how much light the lens lets through, so it's slightly different. So I'm going to show you guys some photos from f1.8, that is just because that's the lowest I have, all the way up to f16. So it's better to use like a higher aperture for like landscapes where you want everything in focus, because the lower your aperture is, the less that is in focus. So obviously if you're like a landscape photographer, you want f8, maybe a real estate, you might, so like if you're like a housing, you might want f8. You never really go like crazy high, because then you have to compromise with your ISO and your shutter speed. But we will get into ISO in a minute. Yeah, so f1.8 means the hole in your lens is fully open if you have an f1.8 lens. If you have like a 1.4, it'll be as wide, or like a 1.2, like the Sigma 35 f1.2. Definitely don't have that. But yeah, so basically it's just like how open it is. So like a 24-70, which is normally a 2.8. So like if you're doing something where you want like crazy background separation, like if you can see behind me, these are quite out of focus. So if I move back though, so the face auto tech goes on my face, these should go into focus. I'll show you guys an example of a f1.8 photo which is on the wall, right there. ISO. So ISO is how sensitive your sensor is to light. So the sensor is what sees light and turns it into a photo. Now the higher your ISO, the more grain it adds to a photo. Now it can be good because you can add grain, but you don't really want grain normally. So yeah, it's not a good thing to have, but you'd kind of do like you work out your shutter speed and your aperture, where you can adjust. I would recommend just like picking like your aperture, your shutter speed first, and then adjusting your ISO to make that decent. So obviously if it ends up looking really dark, you can open up your aperture a bit more, or make your shutter speed a bit longer and turn your ISO up. That's how I like to think about it. But ISO, you do want to keep it as low as possible, but in modern cameras and with denoising softwares like on Lightroom and other denoising, you're fine to use high ISOs. But I know on every camera you can't, because my old camera, the Lumix G80, the ISO is limited to 3200, so it can be an issue. And then you end up going for longer shutter speeds and it messes up your photo. So, but there's nothing you can do. Gotta work with what you've got. So yeah, so like on Lightroom there's denoise. It's a great tool, I use it a lot on the G80 photos. Now we're gonna have a quick look at file format. So basically it's very simple. If you're editing your photos, shoot in RAW. If you're not, JPEGs. Because RAW, it has more detail, but the colours aren't perfect. So the colours are more how your camera would see it, whereas JPEG, it does a little edit in camera. Kind of like that. Focal length's pretty simple. The higher the number, the more zoomed in your image is. It's really dumbed down, but it's pretty much just that simple. Now, white balance, it's not. So basically, if you want a colder looking image, use a higher or lower. Or if you want warmer, use a higher number. If you want lower, use a colder number. It's literally that simple. Yeah, white balance is really simple, so it's not really. But you should just play around, experiment with it, as you should with all of this. Just play around, experiment, see what works for you best. This is just so you get the gist of it, really. There's also auto white balance, which can be alright, because on this, the S5, there's auto warm and auto cold, and just auto. But white balance isn't that important if you're editing, because you will just adjust it in Lightroom. So yeah. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope I will see you guys again in another video. Make sure you guys check out that like and subscribe button. Have a look at my link tree. Follow me on Instagram. You see photos where I post all my photos. And check out my Adobe portfolio, which is jacobinans.myportfolio.com. I have all my photos on there. Well, I don't. I have my best photos on there, because you're limited to how many photos you can put on, but it's free with my Lightroom benefits. So, yeah. Hope I'll see you guys again. Goodbye.